My name is Mildred, and this is Your Mental Health Matters, sponsored by Our Neutral Voices. On set with me tonight is Miss Alicia, Miss Crystal, and Miss Tammy, both licensed mental health counselors. And the topic tonight is a part 2, young adults and their mental health. College students struggle, and we have a college student. What best way to get into the information that's needed for her to continue going to school and thriving, right? So let's talk about it. There's some things that Miss Alicia has concerns, wants questions, has questions and needs advice. So let's dig into it, Miss Alicia. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
How about yourself?
Not
Thank
too
you again
bad.
for having me on the show.
You're welcome.
And I guess one of my first questions is, what do you do when you don't have the emotional capacity to just hear your loved ones vent? Like, you have a lot on your plate, and people are coming to you with their problems, and you're open to hearing them because you have a heart to, but sometimes it's just like it can be too much, and if they don't want advice, they just want to wallow in the problem. How do you go about that? How do you prepare for that?
You can go. Yeah, go ahead. Let's have it. So we would call that compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
For that person, that has the heart to listen and is always the one that everyone goes to. And with that, I think it's important to tap back into your coping skills as far as taking time out for yourself and having that me time so you can regroup and rejuvenate and restore yourself so you can be available to other people in order to help them. So compassion fatigue, I know it's not talked about a lot, but that's when we are always the fixer and trying to help everybody and listen to all the problems. However, we're not doing that for ourselves.
That's right.
And then having a trusted friend or family member that you can go to and then just be without being in that professional role or in that caregiver role.
Another thing you want to pay attention to is knowing what your limits are.
Yeah.
Listen to your body. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I just don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to take on, some of the issues that you're coming with. You have to know you. So I don't want you to feel like you have to push yourself or force it, because just think about if you're giving advice and you're running on empty, who's saying that advice is going to be sound, good advice. So that's something to pay attention to.
That's good. That was the first time I heard about compassion fatigue. I've heard of emotional unavailability.
Yeah, that
I've
too.
never heard of that one before.
That's a real thing.
So the 2 things I heard were boundaries, knowing your boundaries, and having coping skills. You mentioned, Miss Tammy, coping skills with the compassion fatigue. What does that mean, to have coping skills?
So that's just, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. And I believe we talked about this on several occasions, and that's just self-care.
Yeah.
Self-care, whether it's taking a walk, getting some fresh air. Fresh air is always a great thing.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, even in the wintertime. So in regrouping yourself, warm baths, whatever that thing is for you to rejuvenate.
That's right.
And getting in the Word. If you have a foundation of faith, definitely tapping into your faith and making that a priority for you. And exercising. Eating properly. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but those are some of the basic things that we need to rejuvenate ourselves and replenishing the fluids. That's always important as well.
Yeah, that's big. I know a lot of people that, and me myself, have neglected eating properly, like eating 3 meals a day or being dehydrated. And I see the importance of that, because you cannot run on empty.
That's right. Especially with you being a college student.
Right.
Yeah, you got to make sure that you're eating.
And I hear a lot of college students say, I'm fasting. And that's like, to me, a cop-out, because they're so busy that they don't have time. And when they're just going, their palates just are bland, where they are not they don't
consuming.
they don't desire it,
Right.
and it's like until they pass out. You know,
Yeah,
you've
it's
got
not
some kids
healthy.
that are falling out in class
Yeah.
or walking somewhere because they're so, like you said, dehydrated.
Right.
And one thing Miss Alicia mentioned was eating 3 times a day, and sometimes it's okay to graze through the day.
Yeah,
You know,
snacking.
snacking on healthy
Mhm.
foods just to keep your mental state,
Right.
abreast. And then again, the exercising and water is very important. People don't tend to think so, but that also replenishes our cells,
That's
brain
right.
cells, and gets the toxins out of our body. So those are important things for me.
Yeah, good stuff.
One of the things for me is scents. So before we
Yeah.
started, I
Let 'em
kind
know
of
about your
lathered with
scents
tea
now.
tree oil. You know, it calms me down. I get butterflies and nerves.
Yeah.
Also, when we talk about eating physically, I know Miss Alicia is a spiritual person, and a lot of our students have their own mindset on whether it's a relationship with God or religion, whatever it is. But that's an outlet as well.
Yeah.
Making sure that you have that connection that you had when you were home,
That's right.
so you don't skip a beat, so you feel like, I heard Miss Tammy say it earlier, protection. I heard that
Covering.
word.
Yeah.
Covering.
You're outside of your normal, quote unquote, normal covering from when you grew up.
Yes.
And hopefully, young people, when you're leaving home, you will stay connected with that. However, I do know, just by my own experience, when we turn 18 and we leave home, we think it's time to do us.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you don't want to have that regular routine of church and being in church 4 or
Right.
5 days a week. You just want to establish who you are on your own terms. Not saying that that's the best way.
Right.
However, that's what young adults do.
Mm.
So,
That touches into my question about like roots and staying grounded. So a lot of me and Miss Mildred were talking about her Spanish roots, her Spanish heritage, and a lot of her kids don't want to learn the language and some of the things. And from my own experience, like my grandma, she was big with manual labor, like yard work, and when we go over there, we always do some type of yard work or painting something or cooking. And a lot of the grandkids don't like to do that. So where do we fall off from getting to the roots, and how do the younger generation, how do we get back there? And joining, because I don't think we know the importance of it.
you have to want to
That's
and
true.
acknowledge it, because those are values that your grandparents or your parents are setting for you.
Did you guys have the interest in it, or were you forced to it and then saw the importance of it? feel like that's a big part.
For me, it was just like a natural thing. You're gonna do chores, you're gonna do this, you got rules. And when I left home, yes, I did keep up with a lot of that.
Right.
However, as young adults, you're gonna be defining something.
That's right.
Right.
With that, I still know that in time, I came back to it.
Yeah.
So it is important to have the roots,
That's right.
from the elders and learning their wisdom, because you're going to need it when they're not here.
Amen.
That's so true.
Amen. When she talked about that manual labor, we notice in this society with these young adults the lack of using your hands. She talked about yard work.
Right.
And some of the things that is missing is that elder, that component of values.
Yeah, that's big.
And that's huge. Recently, I had a conversation with somebody, and one of the comments that they made, I want to make sure I get it correct, is young adults are weak. And I was thinking how, I could just imagine me telling my kids, you're weak, and the backlash that I would get. So before the show, I asked Miss Alicia, what does she think about that comment? What does that mean? When we were talking about it, we were talking about the lack of values that the young adults don't have nowadays.
Yeah.
If something breaks, they throw it away. I come from a generation, if something breaks, we take it apart
Yeah.
and find out, you know,
Right.
how the mechanism works, and then we learn something new. It's like the generation doesn't want to learn something new. So can you share with us when somebody says that young adults are weak or need a reality check? How do you feel? How does that make you feel?
I definitely think it depends, I guess, on what areas we do say that we are weak in. For sure, reality check. I know a lot of like the media makes us think about we're living in like a rainbow unicorn, really
Right,
high
right.
positive state. So
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
we don't even get in touch with our emotions and stuff like that. Or maybe sometimes we are too emotional with things and really sensitive. But I think to an extent we are weak in some areas, but it's all things that we weren't taught or
Yeah,
were taught.
And
But
didn't
we
pay
are
attention?
stronger. Yeah, we are also stronger in some areas. I guess like the mental aspect. We're paying attention to the things that were ignored in the past.
Mm.
Like in some cases we are breaking generational.
Curses.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
That's a
would
good
say
one.
that term weak, that's a strong term,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't use that for a young person coming up and, you know, trying to find their way.
Right.
I would say a lot of them are misdirected
Yeah.
That's a good
because of values that they missed
Right.
coming up, whether it was the household or other
Yeah.
experiences. However, I don't think it's a lost cause. If we're still living and breathing,
Mhm.
we can still redirect that. And
Amen.
another thing, and I'll let Miss Crystal talk on that, I think they are too dependent on the quick, fast, and in a hurry, the technology.
Burger King, have it your
Yes,
way
and
mentality.
we're missing that social connection
Right.
between generations and between each other.
Mm.
So
Very
that's a
true.
big thing, I think, in
Yeah.
what they're missing as far as a stronger foundation
Yeah.
and a stronger connection with each other.
I do have a quick question before. So like, and to that extent, where do we, I don't want to say blame the parents or the older generation for that, because we kind of were like, you know, given the technology and just fed with it. So,
Are you trying to say
like,
that we just gave y'all stuff? That our generation just gave you
I wouldn't
things
say
that we
our-
didn't make you work for? Because my kids say the
That's-
same thing. Mom, you know, you gave us what you didn't have. And we kind of, our generation kind of made the next generation of young adults feel like they're entitled.
Oh, that's
For
a big
sure.
one.
That's a
You
big
know,
one, too.
the young
Yes.
adults, I don't know if I'm the only one noticing, but they feel entitled to certain things. Like they're supposed to have
Right.
it. Or they'll say, I didn't ask to be here.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So
Anybody
that's
hear
a-
that? I didn't ask to be here. And I'd be like, well, I didn't ask to be here either.
Right, right.
You know, welcome to the world.
Right.
You know, so we're here now. What do we do? How do we
Yeah.
maneuver life? How do we maneuver school?
Yeah, yeah.
Being out of the home. Now, Alicia, I think, lives on campus, but she's from Fort Wayne, right? So your mom,
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis.
Well, Gary originally did.
so your mom is
In Indy.
In Indy, so it's not too far away,
Mm-hmm.
but she's away from home, from her surroundings, what she's used to,
Right, right.
and trying to navigate and trying to get information. And I don't know if you noticed, she seems timid, right? Soft spoken, but she has a huge heart, very
Yeah.
intelligent. So we want to make sure that she gets as much information as possible. So if you're just joining us, you are watching Neutral Voices, Your Mental Health Matters, sponsored by Our Neutral Voices. And we're talking to a college student with some struggles. So what are the things that you had? Because I know you sent me 2 pages full of stuff. And
Yeah.
so keep going. Let's get some more.
I guess I still kind of want to talk or touch on the basis of where do we draw the line of us blaming the parents and us taking responsibility and accountability for
Yeah. So I want to kind of back up a little bit and kind of share my experience was kind of different growing up. You know, what shaped me to be who I am is my work ethic. And that was definitely instilled by my parents, you know, growing up. You know, my dad having us work, you know, after school on the weekends. And I didn't mind it. I mean, I know that's probably a rarity, you know, but I mean, I really enjoy using my hands, you know, because that really shaped me to who I am, and wanting to have that go get it attitude,
Right.
you know. And so with my nieces, my nephews, I try to pour that into them as well, because I have siblings who are younger than me, you know, and of course parents kind of, you know, treat them a little different, you know, versus us older ones. But again, just making sure that they know that you have to work for your stuff. Like, you have to go and get it. You have to want it, and not feel like people are going to give you things, you know, because it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And she made a comment as far as blaming parents. I believe each one of us has to get to a point where, okay, what do I want from my life?
Yeah, that's right.
And not blame whoever it was that raised you, and make or choose a different course in saying that, okay, this is what I want from my life, whether I got it from mom, dad, or didn't get it.
That's right.
It's now up to me to move forward in the path that I'm trying to walk.
Amen. Amen.
So you have to come to that point.
It's a choice.
Forgiveness,
Yeah.
you know,
That's a big one too. Yeah.
forgiveness to not to blame the next generation. I didn't do anything. You know, I just, you know, sometimes we have to, for me, I did the best that I could
With the tools that
with
you
the
had.
tools that I had in that moment.
Yeah.
Whether it was good, whether the outcome was bad,
Right.
whether I didn't make the right decision, it was the best decision that I could make. That's what I have to tell myself, so I don't beat myself
That's
up.
right. That's right.
You know, because then when you become a young adult, you get older, you know, you get old, and then you start to think, what could I have done? And the blaming game.
And then with that, the older we get, we try to tell the younger generation some of the mistakes we made, so you guys can avoid them. So it's up to the younger generation to be open to that and receive that. And then instead of blaming the parents for whatever they didn't do, I think grace
That,
will go
grace.
along
That's
with
a
it.
beautiful
Yes.
thing. Come on.
So, yeah, we could talk a whole segment of that one.
On
Maybe
grace.
one day.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all about choice. You know, like Miss Tammy said, it's your life now. You know, you're not with your mom, dad, whomever. You're out the house. It's your life now. It's what you make it to be.
And the
So-
consequences
And
of
the
your
consequences.
action.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times we go through life and don't think about the long-term consequences. You know, whether it's going out to a party, you know, having unprotected sex. Now you have a child.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now you're not only taking care of you, but now you're taking
Come
care of
on.
someone else. That's another
Right.
segment.
That's
But
not
I'm just saying you have
That's
to
true.
you
Yeah.
have to think about the consequences
Yeah.
of your actions.
That was another one of my questions too. Like,
We're hitting them tonight. Oh, that's good.
I mean, hookup culture it's always been a thing, but it seems more prominent just because of the media now. Like,
Yeah.
I guess Hot Girl Summer, and then just, you know, what do they call it? Sneaky links? I feel old when I say what do they call it?
I never heard that one.
heard that.
Really?
Nope.
It's like
I've
where
never-
you know,
I've
you
never
just,
heard of it.
you have encounters with people that but it's a secret.
Oh.
So nobody else knows about it.
Yeah. That's
Physical
kinda-
encounters, sexual encounters. Is that what you? Okay. You got to be specific.
Okay.
For us old folks, we want to understand the lingo.
Okay. It's kind
But,
of like, you know,
um,
sneaking out the
I'm
window
I'm
through the
just
back
saying.
door type.
So what you're asking is, basically, where's that coming from, or
I don't know. I guess like advice to the younger generation, because I know.
don't do it. I mean,
Well-
the consequences of your actions.
Think about the consequences. And again, the human brain doesn't complete its growth until about 25 or so.
25,
Mm.
yeah.
And we have to encourage them. Still listen to sound
Yeah.
advice, even though you're wanting to do your own thing. It's still good to accept sound advice.
Yeah.
And be careful with the drug scene, the sex scene,
Yeah.
promiscuous sex and all that. Because every decision we make has a consequence,
Oh, yes.
whether it's
Oh,
good,
man,
bad,
that's
ugly,
right.
whatever.
So, I guess, what advice would you give your younger self that maybe had the same thought or was, I want to say, influenced by other peers that were doing the same
How
thing?
old are we talking? How old?
Yeah.
I
What
guess
age?
maybe young adult, college age.
18, 19.
Yeah, like what do you think is the root of it? My
Love
take is-
yourself enough.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Mm-hmm.
Love yourself enough to make a decision that's going to benefit you
Right.
in the
right.
long run.
And then also like the belonging. Like,
Oh, yeah.
why do you feel
Fit
like
in.
you have to belong to a certain group or crowd?
Right.
You know, I know that you're still learning about yourself, and of course, we want to be around people, but at the same time, nobody can fill that void,
Mhm.
you know, but you. So that's something to think about. Like, okay, that peer pressure and not being easily influenced.
Yes, and then with the social media, I would say
Yeah.
give that thing a break, like at
Yeah.
least once a week,
Mhm.
because you know it's a detriment
It is
to a
yeah.
lot of people, and if we can't disconnect every once in a while,
Right.
then we're going to be too caught up in it
Amen.
and what it's offering us. So
So
Give it a
when
break.
she said, you know, where's the root of it, or where's it coming from? I think about spiritually. You know, in the last days, you know, things are going to happen, you know, where man's going to be disconnected, distracted.
distract
You know,
Oh, yeah.
we are visual creatures. We see things where, you know, law of attraction. You know,
Right.
you see something, you like it, you want it. But there's something spiritual about it, where the enemy is trying to, you know,
Right.
distract. You know, don't get me to start teaching a Bible study. I'm just saying, you know, and we go back to that connection
Yeah, always. Yeah.
of your spirituality with mental health and, you know, God, and
Foundation.
where's your
Yeah.
roots. You know, we talked about the roots and having some. That doesn't only pertain to home,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but your spiritual.
Spiritual.
You know,
Yeah.
what's your foundation like?
Yeah.
You know, and if you're a young adult and you don't know your foundation, you ever see like a waterbed
Yeah,
where you
you're
get
just
on it
floating.
and it's just floating,
You're just floating.
and
Yeah.
it's not firm. You can't put a lot of weight. You scared to put weight because you don't know if it's going to hold you up or if you're going to drown.
That's a good analogy.
So learning to build a
Right.
sound foundation, I should say, is really important, right? So what other things do you have on your list of questions that you have?
Mhm.
Oh man,
There's a lot.
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I guess talking about roots. What were you gonna say?
Talking about roots.
Procrastination. We talked about that a little earlier.
Mhm.
I've
What
heard
is that?
procrastination is like the root of it. I've heard of it. It's like a branch off of fear, and then perfection is a branch off of
Oh,
procrastination.
Mm.
yeah, that's a
I
big
had an
one.
issue with that one before.
Mm.
Perfectionism. I tend to say I'm a recovering.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay.
I am.
Now you don't care. It's whatever.
Well, I do, but not as much as I used to.
Yeah.
You guys knew me back then. It was like, wow.
Woo.
Yeah.
Dang.
Procrastination.
Yeah.
What about you, Miss Crystal?
I mean, that's something you have to definitely deal with and come up with something, a system that works better for you. You know, everybody's system is different when it comes to meeting deadlines and all that, but having a schedule, holding yourself accountable,
Yes.
all that good stuff plays a big part.
And having too much, you know, I work at a clothing store, and sometimes the
Yeah.
men that come in, it's like they're looking around, and I say, oh, it's a kid in a candy store, you know. And
Yeah.
sometimes with procrastination, you have so many things on your
Yeah,
plate.
That's true too.
They all look good. You want to get them all done at the same time. But as we were talking earlier, sometimes when we attack everything at the same time, something gets missing.
Yeah, something's
Yeah.
gonna
A
lack.
detail is going to lack.
Yeah.
As opposed to writing something down,
Right.
being intentional. Okay, I have all this, write it down, and then write it again in
Yeah.
order of priority.
Yeah. That's how you
If
go.
it's date wise, then put that first. If it's, you know, what's the urgency, what's going to take the longest, what could wait, and then that way you feel like when you do those lists and you start to
Yeah.
check stuff off, you feel
It's a
like
relief.
you've accomplished something. Then you
and breathe.
And then
Yeah.
you can either listen to somebody or move on to the next
Right.
task. But if you don't, if you're not intentional in making that
word.
list, and like Miss Tammy said, is to love on yourself.
Yeah. Come on.
You know, if how can we help you? Help me help you. I tell people that, help me help you. What is it that you're lacking? What do you need? How can I help you?
Yeah.
But if I'm going to help you, you have to help yourself.
Yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
show up.
You have, thank you. You have to show up. What does that look like for a young adult
Come
who
on.
has a full
Right.
schedule and they do extracurricular activities
Yeah.
before school and after school, and they have an after school job? You know, you talked about physical health and eating and all that stuff. I don't know about you, but when I felt overwhelmed where I couldn't breathe,
Yeah.
you know, that was something that my daughter also expressed, that she couldn't breathe when she was in school. She couldn't, it was hard for her.
Overextending.
Overextended.
Yeah.
And always, and you know, I always tell her, like we talked, having a village.
Yeah, very true.
Having somebody, you know, people vent to you, but who are you venting
Amen.
to? You know, like, it's like the church, you know, you have pastors and ministers. Who does the pastor go? Who is your
Yeah.
covering? Like you talked about, who is your covering?
So if you're on campus, tap into the resource. A lot
Man,
of times they do have
yes.
like counseling centers, you know, life coaches. I mean, that's a great start when it comes to, okay, I have all this on my plate. Help me to organize it.
Organize it
Mhm.
or minimize it.
There you go.
You know, and cut some of it out.
Mhm.
You know, just for a time until
Yeah.
you get readjusted. And it's always good to have a connection, someone to
Mhm.
bounce things off and do that self-care. And you can't stress that one enough.
Man, self-care
too.
is not selfish.
Come
I always
on.
say that.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I'm just learning that, to be honest. You
It's
know,
a real thing. Come
recently, because I've worked, and overextended,
Yeah.
you know, while I was in school or whatever. But, you know, it's awesome to have a platform where you feel safe,
Yeah.
where we can have a discussion candidly
Mhm.
to help someone else
That's
that
right.
may look like you and say, hey, she's in my class.
Right.
Mhm.
And now somebody can ask you questions on,
Yeah, that's true.
and that's a ministry. That's a blessing, you know. So being here, you know, having Miss Crystal, Miss Tammy, thank you always
Yeah,
for
yeah.
showing up.
Thank you for
You know,
having me.
Thank
it's
you.
always
Yeah.
important that we are, like my boss says, transparent.
Yeah, I love that.
You know, we have to be transparent and consistent.
Yep.
Because people are watching us even when we don't know that they're
is
watching
so
us.
True. So true.
You know, so I want to thank you all tonight again
Yeah.
for always coming and showing up.
Yeah.
You know, Miss Alicia, thank you for being transparent, you know,
Yeah.
and asking those hard questions that, you know, sometimes young adults are embarrassed
Yeah.
to ask. They feel like they're going to be talked down, you know, like some of the comments that have been made. Thank you all for joining us. Again, if you are watching us, this is Your Mental Health Matters, sponsored by Our Neutral Voices. If you have not subscribed, why don't you go to our YouTube page, our Facebook page, like and subscribe so you can get notifications not only on Your Mental Health Matters, but we have other segments throughout the week. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I want to leave a quote as usual. Self-care is how you take your power back.
Ooh.
We rise by lifting others. When we're strong, you know, we can lift others up. And as always, before we leave the set, what we say is always protect your mind. Thank you for watching.
Whoop, whoop.